Welcome to Bitcoin Core App Design call number 66. What a nice number here. Um, we once again we're meeting here to discuss the design and general project updates. And I will share the notes Google Doc again with edit access so anyone can hop in there and take notes. It's about halfway down or so in the document where we have our call notes. I don't have a ton of stuff. Let me just pull that up here in my background, make myself a little bit smaller. I don't have a ton of stuff since last week. I basically just updated the design docs with this widget slash showcase mode. And that's about it from my side. What else would you like to talk about? Maybe we can gather topics first. Oh, and Utibe asked separately about good first issues. So I think as a design crew, maybe we can figure out where some good first issues are for contributions.
Good one.
It could be
Um,
research, could be design, could be giving
I'd
feedback.
love some help from you guys because I'm going to meet Josie in Amsterdam in 2 days from now. Um, so in the next 48 hours, and I know Gerald, you met him as well. I think he's more on the wallet side of things.
I helped onboard Josie to work on Bitcoin actually.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. He's so
So
nice. He's so nice.
yeah.
So I'm going to be spending the whole day in Amsterdam with him working, and I'd like to try to make it as productive as possible. So, whatever you guys think it would be good to share with him at this stage, get some feedback on, relevant to what he's working on. I'd love to kind of put that together between today and Friday morning.
Do you know what specifically he's working on in the wallet? Is there some like specific niche thing or just anything? Or?
Yeah, so he's he's taken over silent payments. And silent payments, the basic thing is it gives you good privacy against address reuse for free. But there is some interactivity. You do have to provide some information. You publish a silent payment address, but and I'm a little unclear on the sender side. But there is some piece of data that you have to provide, and then from then on, you'll never reuse an address when somebody is sending you payments. So you eliminate address reuse. But what that looks like in the GUI, well, generating a silent payment address would be like generating any other address. But how do we provide, or how do we convey, that this is kind of like a special type of address you're generating that gives you this extra benefit of every time you receive, um, it'll be to a new address, right? So like, you generate a certain address, but then every time afterwards that you're receiving, it's to another address. So UX wise, I think this is a bit of uncharted territory, perhaps
Yeah.
um, for like design best practices, because you're generating one address, but then every time you receive is actually to a different address, right?
Yeah, two questions about that. Is that still the method where you have to do this initial on-chain transaction that kind of signals stuff, or has all of this stuff moved off-chain?
Um, I have to look at the BIP again,
Yeah.
but there isn't a cost, so I don't imagine that you necessarily are. I don't think anymore.
Yeah. Because the original idea was that you basically you create this separate address, which is almost like you give another person a dedicated XPub for them, and then they can create more addresses that are assigned that are your addresses, and then they can just whenever they need to send you something, they can generate a new address on their own because you gave them this specific XPub. The problem with that is then that this all of this stuff needs to be somehow tracked, like you create this thing that's not logged anywhere. If you ever come back to this in the future and import this wallet, how are you going to know if you lose a little bit of information? Then are you going to lose all of these addresses? And that's, I think, the original version of this stuff always had an on-chain part where you basically generate this thing, and as an on-chain uh, um, footprint. That way, it's always stored forever somewhere. And if, let's say, you import the wallet from your seed phrase or whatever, it detects this on-chain footprint, and from there it can derive everything again, rather than you having to keep track of it somehow and potentially losing it.
Yeah, so
That
this
might be a
isn't
good-
this is this isn't doing the on-chain op return BIP47 payment code.
Yeah,
Um, it does some cryptographic scheme on some piece of data within the address, it looks like, to then okay, but the question was on backups. There is going to be a method of backing up
yeah.
the wallet. At the last core dev, it is a question whether or not it would use descriptors or not. But yeah, we'll see how that unfolds. I think the main thing I'm really interested in is how do we convey, this new form of receiving payments where it can be unintuitive, but you have this greater privacy benefit.
Yeah, it's a similar challenge with Bolt 12 addresses, where you can generate these static codes through which payments can be received on Lightning. And you also kind of need to have in the UI, you're going to have to track those somehow. A little
So
bit
could
different,
you
but generally so.
With silent payments, you really need you do need a full node, at least for now, until there is a method of a light client being able to somehow check every transaction, because what you have to do is you have to check every single transaction in a block with the secret data, so that then you can find this other address that seemingly isn't associated to you, but it really is. And so you need this full node there. Yeah, so I think it's an interesting design challenge to figure out how do we convey that.
would it be an idea, because I'm feeling like, and I'm curious to hear your guys' ideas on this, that this would be building like way ahead. Like this is probably going to be like, I don't know where you guys see silent payments kicking in, but maybe in V5 or something like that, or maybe sooner. Would it be an idea to build along with him and ask him how he envisions the user flow to be, like try to think through the steps with him, and then maybe also show him the send flow and get his idea on how that would fit into the send flow. I'm just kind of thinking out loud in terms of
Yeah. Yeah, designing is planning, right? You can do all these explorations way ahead of anything being implemented. And then it makes implementation easier because stuff's already figured out for the most part.
okay.
Yeah, so doing mock-ups, wireframes, quick explorations, all of this stuff should be pretty helpful. And maybe it can be maybe we can just call it like a 5.2 milestone or some random number, and then, I mean, at some point it will be part of things, right? But we just don't know. A future milestone, an unassigned milestone.
And show him current send user flow. That would be cool.
Yeah. So actually it's interesting. So you have the send and the receive, right? On the receive side, you basically say, I want to create this new unique address that is not a one-off throwaway, but it can be used multiple times. And most likely, I will give it to one dedicated person that needs to send me on their own terms, on just whenever. So you probably assign it or label it for some specific use case, and then the application will have to monitor derived addresses from that. And then when you, let's say, Mo, I give you one of these addresses, you somehow have to put this in your application and say, okay, this is whenever I send Christoph a Bitcoin, which, please do that all the time, then this is the one that I should be using. So in the send flow, it should be an option where either I paste it in and it detects maybe, oh, this is a silent payment address, save it for future use, give it a label or so, or you have an address book
Mhm.
to draw from.
Yeah, I guess one way to think about it, and this is kind of how I discussed it with Josie as well, was a use case of donations for some cause, right? So XYZ cause. And so you would generate this address, and then people would send donations to this charity. And in the wallet, you could group the resulting addresses that come in where these payments go in. It's not to that address, it's like to these other addresses, but you will know um, that they were associated that they were associated with that. So you could always group it. Okay, so like silent payment for XYZ charity. Do you get what I'm saying? Like when we have the activity screen and you're showing you're receiving these payments, there could be some label that shows maybe an icon like this is a silent payment, and groups it with whatever the label you assigned to the first address was. Just thinking about that there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, we have that type of stuff covered in the activity page in the Bitcoin design guide.
So Josie's working on the behind the scenes, like he's actually working on the protocol level development of the silent payments, which would then show on the UI. That's kind of his, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, he's working on the wallet code because we
Mhm.
there's an internal wallet, and the GUI just uses the internal node, the internal wallet, all these utilities. So when that's in there, then in the UI, it would be like certain functions that we'd call, and it would be generate a silent payment address. And then us on the user experience side, it's okay. So how do we present that data? But yeah, he's working on the wallet code that will enable sending and receiving these silent payments.
So maybe a starting point could be to identify use cases, like 3, 4
Mhm.
diverse, 5 different use cases that kind of cover a, a good percentage. And
Mhm.
from there, list out all the different user flows for
Mhm.
those use cases. And then you could probably derive specs and wireframes and mockups from those.
Mhm. Gotcha.
I'd say it's a really cool thing. Obviously, it's not merged yet, and it has to go through a review process. And it's a possibility that it's decided, like this isn't getting in a core. But right now, it seems to have sufficient support, so we can uh, start that process of brainstorming ideas on how this would look like.
Right. I'll do exactly that. I like the suggestion from Christoph. Identify use cases, list out the user flows, and then come up with specs and wireframes. So I'll. That's what we'll sit together and do on Friday then, um, as an exercise. Yep.
Yeah, and so Christoph is looking at the recent merges. So yeah, we have a certain part of BIP 324, the most important part, and most of us, well, all of really assume UTXO, and those are two really really important things that we want to convey. Habasto has added the initial UI uh, labels for the Qt widgets GUI, and it's just in the node screen. Just add a new label that says this node is a V2 transport, right? But we can discuss with him, and we can discuss with some other people. Well, what does proper signaling to the user? Because having your P2P messages encrypted is one of the most important things uh, that shields you from people analyzing that you're even communicating in Bitcoin and talking about sending Bitcoin messages to other people, right? It just looks like random garbage. And that's really important. So I think it deserves more than one label that says V2 transport.
Yeah, I did see there were a whole bunch of stuff was merged the last few days.
So that was there. So we had a feature freeze, and after the feature freeze, that's when you merge all of these big things, because that gives us the most amount of time to check, okay, are there really any bugs until the next release. So that's why you have these big things merged.
YOLO merge, get it all in there.
Yeah, that's what's done at the beginning of a new release cycle. It's
Yeah.
like, all right, well, let's see.
Awesome.
Is it okay if I do like a 1 minute share on the research? There's a very small update in terms of sorting through the data, like minor update, because at least you guys know that there's been some movement with this. This is the file that we're working with. I spent some time today actually going through one section here, which is the section on what do you like most about the wallet that you use. And I moved that into the next phase of the sorting over here. I divided them into tiers. So tier 1 would be the things that the people are kind of, most of the people said this thing. So I call this tier 1. I call this tier 2, and I call this tier 3. So the larger buckets were what they really liked were things that were directly related to the UI. Second thing that was coming up the most was coin control. The third thing that came up the most had something to do with the Lightning Network. And this is for on-chain and Lightning wallets mixed together, as well as like Sparrow, Electrum, all the way. So this is like all the way across the board. And then the third was actually transaction details. So that's just a really quick share, and these are all of the other buckets that came up. So it's quite interesting to see what was coming up the most, and then I'll really work towards getting this sort of spaghetti in better shape in the coming days, because it's pretty much still spaghetti at the moment, but it's getting there. So that's just a very quick update. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for working on that, and hopefully we can get some insight on that, to guide us.
Yeah.
Well, along that, I was last week we had Mr. Gnome come on, and it was good to get feedback from people who would be users who would find value in it. And so I'll be going to SatsConf in Brazil, and gonna work with Area Bitcoin to also try to get feedback from people there who would also be a target audience of people who necessarily aren't going to buy a dedicated node hardware and aren't going to run a server on their laptop, right? So they're a target user base of people who want to run just an application on whatever device they have. So hopefully can get some feedback from there on what they need. Running a node software, making sure we portray what's going on to them clearly. And I think we can get valuable feedback there. So.
I can do a quick update to
Yeah.
this page here that I put in also based basically on the conversation last week. So this is bitcoincore.app/showcase. I just summarized this concept that we talked about, how during the first version of the app, Harold, you came up with this idea of, I put this on my big TV, the block clock's really tiny, let's make it bigger. And then we kept discussing, and then we came up with this idea of the compact view of the block clock, where it's just for practical use, right, on your little device or on your desktop, you just kind of want to see it. And then the idea of the showcase mode, where you have it statically on a phone, on your nightstand, or you hang an iPad on your wall, or you have a big TV, or you show it at the conference. You want it not just bigger, but it could fill the whole screen. The rest of the UI could fade away. Maybe there's more detail. Maybe there are lovely animations, and maybe there are these widgets here. So I just documented added a little bit of, kind of summarized the stuff that was already done and put it into, called this like under other here in the sidebar. I just called it the showcase. It's basically like the second view mode of the BlogTalk. So you'd either activate it in settings, or maybe there's like a little button in the top right corner that's like a full screen button. And then there would be some type of grid layout that you could configure with these different widgets. And then there would be some widgets, and then you would see something, and it would be cool. That's it. It's not very well thought through in all the details, but it's
that's
up there.
that's so exciting. Seeing it portrayed like that in a grid, it's really exciting to see.
I was actually wondering if this could be. I mean, if development-wise, this is pretty far out, but you could build a web-based version of this if there's some simple API or data provider available, or you could just connect it to your own node, just to feel it out and kind of see what data you get. And
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's one thing.
If someone wants to, should get ahead of
Right.
things.
Yeah.
And then that would if you actually build it out as a web prototype, you could experiment very, very quickly, and then the final implementation would be much easier than in the end, because it's already figured. You have to figure out that all these widgets work with all kinds of different data ranges and amounts, and sometimes data's missing, or it takes a while to build it up, or you need to figure out, let's say, in your fee range, you want to color things based on what is a high fee environment or low fee. Like, how do you figure out what's high fee, what's low fee over time, and all that? It's all kinds of stuff to figure out.
I can ping Promag on that, because I believe QML can also run as a web app, and he wanted to, early on when he was working on it, he wanted to have web prototypes where we would test out the components, but it's still the same QML code,
Mhm.
right? So there is a way where we're prototyping the QML code without going into the node internals. So yeah, so there that could be a good idea.
Could be cool.
Christoph, where can we? Is there a link to this in the Figma file? I'd love to also share it as well with Josie as well, or
So,
with other people.
This is in some super old Figma file of mine. I need to port it over,
All right.
clean it up, because there are all kinds of missing components and weird stuff happening in there. But if you want me to, I can clean it up. And like with the other pages, most of them have a Figma link here at the top.
Yep. People are so keen on this design, so I just love to get it in front of more people. And yeah.
Yeah. How do you say it? It gets the people going.
It gets people excited. So yeah.
Cool. And then, as I also mentioned in the Discord, all the other like milestones, most of the designs from our explorations are actually pretty well documented. Basically, but how about we just start? How often do you look at these design docs, if ever at all? Which is fine. You don't look at them.
Honestly, I personally, I'll speak for myself. My head is just mostly on the research side of things. I look at this when you refer to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's definitely something that we should all be looking at a bit more, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really looking at it too much, because I'm always in Figma, and when I want to refer to something, I just go to the respective page in Figma. So it's not like something that's automated.
I look at Figma as well.
Gotcha. But it makes sense you're really deep into it. Yeah.
But for me, when I like first got here, like almost more than a year back now, but this like website was like very useful for me to get a sense of what was happening and what's the design, what is the design approach and the design assets that we are using. And I think this is where I got the Figma file for the first time.
Mhm.
And so I think if somebody new is coming in, this website is something that's super useful. And like especially things like the roadmap and things like that. So like if somebody who's new, this is something that is super useful.
Thank you. I can confirm because like I started following up like 3 days ago. So I'm on the Figma file alone, like I don't really get anything. So I have to use both the website and the Figma file before I can get what's going on.
Yeah, the
So,
Figma file is very unstructured.
mm,
It's just like 400,000 screens all over the place, right? And you kind of have to zoom in and out and figure out and see what's going on. Yeah.
How could we? It seems like everyone goes to Figma, but it seems like these design docs is like, like this is something that I can just I'm in it and I'm like, oh, here's Showcase. Like that's it. That's all I need. Like, so how could we put more visibility on these design docs? I don't know.
Yeah.
'Cause-
I mean, first, the whole purpose is that there's an entry point for all kinds of different things. For people new to the project, you have this option here, provide early feedback, because we don't really have a proper website for the application there. And then you can, so when new people join, they can go here and they can look into those design principles and they can see what colors are being used instead of just looking at one screen that they happen to see and just giving feedback there and not really understanding where it came from. And then for these individual features, also provide like background and thinking and approaches and all of this stuff that may just not be really obvious. With the idea of making it easier to come in and understand and contribute, and also kind of reduce the amount of repeat conversations, because it's all very documented. And let's say the people who work here, we take a break for 3 months for whatever reason, we come back and we might have forgotten stuff too, right? And then we can look back and say, yeah, okay, this is kind of how our layout system works, or why we did it a certain way or so, just to build up that knowledge over time, and not just be a copy paste of Figma, because that's a different purpose. Like this design docs don't have to have all of the 100 different screen variations of every single section. It's a little bit of a different information in a more structured way. And it could also host the research Mo as well, if you'd like to
Yeah.
create some research documentation or feed that in there.
That
also
would be a
cool.
really good one to add in. I'm gonna add that on a sticky note. Yes.
Yeah. And it could also provide, all the cross links into the development and anything else as needed. Yeah, and for right now, like some of these pages, like look at the icons page. Wow, it uses the Bitcoin icons library. Amazing. And stuff like accessibility. There are just some brief ideas in there, but ideally we flesh this out over time. Like this page, I don't think anyone's touched it for a year or so, or even design principles. That we kind of keep refining this stuff over time. And then after we've gone through all of the milestones, then we could split these up differently as well. Yeah, so the whole thing is still very fluid. But yeah, more input would be amazing on anything in here.
I know Christoph has reached out to us a few times on like, hey, can you guys also contribute to this website as well? And I definitely think that like we can all, and definitely for me personally, I can also contribute with research documentation, and maybe we can have a whole session on just contributing to this building this together, so that it's not just Christoph building it, because that's not really in the sense of collaborative building. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I'm just, yeah, thinking out loud. Because this, if we have like a designathon in the community, for example, and we say, hey, can you design out this part of Bitcoin Core? You can basically hand them this documentation and they'll be able to just run with it because they can see all of the background.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And if you think about it, the Bitcoin Core Qt GUI has been around for 12 years, maybe.
The GUI has been around for longer than Bitcoin D.
Okay. So,
but the
Yeah.
this Qt widgets GUI is from 2011. Yeah, so around 12 years.
So, and from reading through discussions in the pull requests and the GUI and all sorts of all kinds of discussions around visual treatment and UI and all of this stuff. And if we want this application to continue for the next 10 years, 20 years, or like Bitcoin long-term thinking, right, low time preferences and whatnot, then I think it would be amazing if we had this really solid documentation. And then let's say in 10 years we'll come back to figuring out discussing some layout stuff. We're like, cool, still there.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't do anything because I was waiting if Christoph really means it.
Means what?
But well, with helping, or if he would just do it himself. No,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
No, I'm
No, but,
happy to do majority of it. Even if you just give feedback and say like, this needs to be that, then that's cool too. Either way.
no, that was just a bad entry into what I was about to say. Because I mean, obviously, I've been on and off on this, let's say, milestone 1.3, for which there is not much on the docs. So well, I think one more iteration or one more update to talk to. We didn't get to it last week. And after that, if we have kind of broad consensus that this is the direction, I can then, just start filling up the page and start basically tomorrow with it.
What can I add in terms of research documentation? I took some notes. Like, what do you think would fit in well in terms of research documentation? I've never done something like this before, so I'm really trying to learn and figure out how to do it.
I mean, it's totally up for us to be shaped whatever we think is useful. A practical thing would be to just have a page called research, and then even if it's just some statements about there are various research initiatives have been going on this project. You can link to the existing ones, maybe like one line or more. Maybe link to. I mean, it doesn't have to be very long, right? It just has to be, even if you just have a quick summary, quick intro, what the approach is, privacy, sensitive, I don't know, whatever it is, and that it's an ongoing, evolving thing, link to all the right places. And that's already enough. That's a great starting point. Then you can evolve it over time. I think, just like the showcase thing only made it into the design docs because Mr. Gnome was like, hey, we need this stuff. And then we're like, oh, we have some ideas there already. We just forgot about them. I think it can be a good idea to be responsive to the needs or to what happens in the project and then start documenting from there. But if you set the seed, a research page with some basic information, that's a good starting point.
Cool. I will kick off a research document, Google document, and then we can just work from there. That will be my contribution.
Yeah. And think iteratively. We can have 1,000 iterations of this. It doesn't have to be super perfect from.
Yeah, gotcha. Start with the bare bones, keep it simple, and then we can build from there. Cool. All right.
Yeah, so these design docs are really important, specifically for the reason of into the future and other people coming in and iterating on it, because the original, Bitcoin was released as a GUI, and so that paradigm was just set by Satoshi, and then that was there until 2012 when Vladimir went ahead and made a new one, and he essentially did it alone. And then years later, then there was an issue posted like, well, who is the GUI designed for? And everyone was kind of giving their opinion on, well, I think it's this, and I think it's that, right? So there is very little historical context there on, well, why are things the way that they are? And so this is a really important thing we're doing here, where we're documenting, well, this is why it's like this. And then into the future, people can look back and say, okay, so this was like this, and but we want to change it, to be that. And people can discuss, and there can be iterating on those ideas. So this is very important.
And we have this at the moment. I'm sorry that it's looking really messy, but we have this at the moment where I try to keep a high level overview of all of the research that's being done. And I'm constantly like adding to this as we go through things. So what I can also do is, like, I looked at past research that was done, and I'm looking at present research that's being done. So we have all of these things that are just kind of scattered everywhere in so many different documents. And if you click into these, you can link, you have the links to all of the Google documents and like anything that was collected. So I could just kind of put this together in a kind of a story format. There was the research of Andrew Chow that was done as well, which is just being summarized by Elena. So we have all of this, and it is really scattered at the moment. It only lives in this Scrintl document of mine, which is not very public. So I will I'll work on that.
Yeah. And maybe just think about someone with with extremely little knowledge on research and the project comes in. Like, what are the absolute basics that they need to know? And it could be things like, we try to be as user focused and as research focused, but there are difficulties because of privacy, the unknown user, intentionally kind of unknowable user base due to lack of analytics and all this stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't know. There's probably a bunch of stuff to be said about that. The general approach.
Cool. Yep. Gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
I think another topic that I think we skipped over a few weeks ago was Michael. You said you had an update on what was it, the send?
Import.
On the import. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, because I think it was 2 weeks ago, Jakub was in the call as well, and we discussed that actually during onboarding we should kind of explicitly ask the user whether they want to use the application as a kind of node only or node and wallet. So that was what I mainly was working on, and two other things. So we could have a quick look. I think it won't take more than like 10 minutes. And if we kind of get to some, let's say, okay, the direction is good, then I can kind of start typing it out in the docs, the design docs, and then we can kind of iterate on GitHub basically to
that'd be awesome.
Move it along. All right, let's share my screen here.
So if my experience proves correct or accurate or whatever, then we're gonna do designs here. But once implementation comes around, usually when implementation actual doing comes around, building stuff, everyone's focus changes a little bit because it's more real, right? It needs to be built. People think through code, through the actual logic, all of this type of stuff. And then refinements will happen. They always happen at that point. So just saying that we can get as close as we think we can with the design with these milestones, but I do think we have to expect some changes and tweaks and another iteration or so to happen once it actually comes down to implementation kicking off.
Yeah, I think it's going to be some kind of preliminary status where we say, okay, design is kind of reviewed, or it's basically ready to pick up, but with the knowledge that it's that the real handiwork or craftsmanship comes in when it's really being actively developed, or kind of sooner than that. So
Yeah.
that it's kind of a preliminary, a pre-final.
Yeah.
Right.
A pre-final.
A pre-final.
All right. Let me share my screen here. Okay, so what the discussion was, and also the discussion that we had last week, was kind of at the end of onboarding to have a screen like this, where we say, how do you want to run the application? And already here, depending on whether a wallet-only version is applicable or not, that already defines where we can put this screen. Because if wallet-only is an option, then we obviously would need to put it before kind of all these things, right? So that's kind of one thing. Yeah, if we have 3 options here, or just kind of node only or node plus wallet, or that would be the first topic, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, no wallet only. It's not possible.
Makes it easier.
Yeah, and then the alternate approach was to be less explicit about it, to take you to the screen where it says add a wallet, and then you can create or import, or you can skip. And skipping is basically saying, I don't want to add a wallet or use a wallet right now. I'm going into the node only mode.
Yeah, so basically something like this. It's a dedicated screen like this.
In the onboarding
but
flow,
in the onboarding flow, yeah, but it's a bit more implicit, right? Because if you skip it, then you're basically doing node only.
Yeah, I think skip's not the right terminology. It would say something like it doesn't like just like this button down here, this learn more. It could be use
Node
only as
yeah.
a node for now, and then for now it still indicates that you can add it later or so. But that way it's not such a big in your face. We kind of have a default user scenario of we assume people will want to use the wallet.
Yeah, you could just also have a third button here that says, yeah, don't do anything. But yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly jump in with the with what Harold said with respect to like we cannot use it as a wallet only, and I was wondering why he said that.
Oh, why it can't only be a wallet?
Yeah.
So when you have a wallet, you have a collection of keys, and these collection of keys need to be checked against block data. And so you can either check against your node that is has all that block data and is checking every transaction to see if you can unlock the script or not, or you can do an SPV, light client where you're telling this light client, maybe I'm interested in this block or this set of transactions, and this light client will send you one block, and then you can get the transactions you need. And Bitcoin Core is a full node implementation. It has no light client functionality, although we can feed light clients. And Bitcoin Core becoming an SPV client doesn't seem very possible in the future. So that's why it's not possible to be only a wallet. Now, there could be appetite in the future, and again, this involves immense amount of changes. There could be an appetite, which I think Bitcoin Knots has done, where you could be a wallet and connect to your own node that's maybe running on a server that you have at home. Although that requires changes to core for us to have this connect. So, but for now, it's just not possible.
Mm.
Right, and so yeah, so that makes sense, and I think that's the case that I was thinking about. Harold, what you just talked about, where I think couple weeks back we discussed this scenario where like on your phone you could think about running Bitcoin Core as a wallet, and then connect to your node at your home, and use that as the node and the mobile phone Bitcoin Core as the wallet. And you are saying that's something that cannot be done without some huge modifications.
Yeah, for now, it's not possible.
And so this remote node use case is like dead in the water.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was also thinking like, could there not be some sort of an application where I want to construct a transaction in a certain way that like only Bitcoin Core allows me to do right now, and then I could always take that transaction and broadcast it from somewhere else.
Yeah, that becomes a pretty hardcore type of application where you
Yeah.
can yeah, that's one thing we technically could do, is you could have this sort of key vault, core key vault that generates keys, constructs transactions, can sign things, and then you can take PSBT, transfer it over somewhere else, and then broadcast that. But I guess, yeah, I mean, if there was a need or a want for that, yeah. But I think that's pretty hardcore. I don't know if people need a GUI for that.
Yes, you still need UTXO data from somewhere.
Yeah, we can just
Yeah.
make Bitcoin Core into hardcore here at the top, and then it's done.
How do you
Oh, Michael, these cool
Hard.
jokes.
Bitcoin?
That was a good one, I guess. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
man.
especially the part about this running only as a wallet, that question will probably keep coming up a few times. So we could actually just design this if someone wants to build it in the future, or we could keep a note somewhere in our design documents that says, why can't why can't we use this as a wallet only, and then explain why not. And then if the question comes up again, it feels like it's something that will come up again.
The thing to keep in mind though is like you're describing wallet with like client in this context, where a wallet only would be something like that has the software function, like software form of a hardware wallet. And it has, and then another piece of software will do all the management and broadcast. And so when we're talking about wallet only mode, it means being a light client, which of course Core is not a light client.
Yeah, it might just be something that people will want to know. And especially for the use case where it says, well, why can't I just run the node on my one device and the wallet on the other? Why doesn't it work? Why?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Just something to document, I would say.
Yep. It's a good thing I have a 38-inch ultra-wide monitor for all the Post-its.
So your whole screen will be covered?
Not yet, but by the time we're done in 5 minutes, then it might be. No, but I think it's okay for now. I think that was the most important question that I had. And everything else we can defer to later. And the other thing that changed since last time was we said it should be when I import a flow, we would want to give some kind of more detailed information about the wallet, if we can, that has been imported, right? Something like, and that's a question: what type of data do we have? And so, for instance, it could be that if the wallet has been named, or if there is a concept like that, we could say, okay, this wallet has been added. So we would list the name. We could say, is it what the key scheme is, and yeah, all these kinds of information that would help identify, or just quickly when I import something, that would help me to basically be confident. Okay, this is what I wanted, and I could either go directly to the wall itself because everything looks good to me, or I want to view it in settings and maybe run a health check. So that's kind of one question: what type of data or information that we could display here on this screen.
Yeah,
Also-
I think that's a question for Harold and Johnny.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, should we just kind of, I mean, is this close enough? And we're just going to say, we're going to put this in the design docs and just call it a day for now. And then once we get closer to implementation, we will look back at it and refine it. Or do you want to do technical validation of this? Like, is it possible? Are there any technical details? How long's the loading? Like, what are the error messages correct? Do you want to do that right away, or just do it later?
I mean, the design docs are a living document, right? So they can always be updated as things change.
Yeah, totally. It's the only thing is that right now Michael has the focus on this, right? So if we come back to it, we just have to assume and be on the same page that we will come back to this, right? That no one is like super concerned when the implementation comes around and it's like all these changes come up and be like, but I thought this was done. Why do we need to go back to this? And if we're on the same page, that's cool. Then we can go.
No, we can change everything whenever we need to. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
What's the point of doing this design stuff and calling it and giving a preliminary sign off or whatnot if at the end of the day everything can be like, if it's not going to be used, right? The goal is to get closer to what it's actually going to be, or close enough.
So you're suggesting as we actually move into Wallet, then we really focus on these designs, and then that goes into the design document.
No,
I think I think what the question was is whether kind of this is already kind of close enough to be put into the design docs, and once we get to the actual implementation, then we worry about stuff like error messages and error paths, or whether you would want to have that discussion already now and not defer that to later.
Yeah, the idea is to, let's say we put this in the design docs, half a year later it comes to development and then everything's changed around again. That's kind of against the point, because for half a year now we had like this, we basically said this is pretty much going to be it, this is the plan, and then it changes at last minute. We kind of want to avoid that. And a part of it is like we can validate it from the design side, but validating it from the technical side is, that's where you need the dev chops.
Yeah, I guess maybe we'll revisit. I have to look at it over again on the Figma.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And maybe we also don't have to decide on the call today, right? Because I'm gonna be adding stuff now to that page, and we can kind of keep discussing there also on GitHub asynchronously. So yeah.
Okay.
That's
sounds
also
good.
a possibility. All right. I think that was basically it. What type of info that we would be able to display here, and and or if there's something that you know for sure that we won't have, like a wallet name, for instance, because if it could be, then we can keep it, but if we know we don't have any of these information, then I can take it out right away. So that was the
Yeah, no, the information there looks good. The only thing are the health checks. I wonder if how that would look like internally with the wallet. But other than that, no, the information there, of course, is fine.
okay.
We know the key scheme. We know the name. We can see a wallet overview. View and settings. What does that mean?
I don't know yet. That's why
Okay.
it's that's why it's this beautifully designed.
So
it's responsive.
Yeah. So the I think it's something that Yashash brought up. He said, well, it's fine if you tell me name and scheme, but there's some other information that I really want to look at to make sure that it was actually imported correctly. So the idea was that, okay, here on this import screen, we just give you like the top two things. For most people, this is enough. And they're like, cool, I'm done. It worked. And then and that would be the primary button. And then there would be a secondary option that says, take me to the wallet settings, where I can see all the 400 different configuration settings, derivation path, whatever descriptor, whatever, everything that someone probably more experienced probably would want to know, to like really double check, ensure everything was imported correctly.
Okay, yeah, so that we'll have to revisit as we get closer and see what we can do there. Yeah.
All right.
But you know what I'm saying? I just don't want us to say like, oh, this is really good, this is really close, and then in half a year it's like, oh no, everything has to be scrapped. It'll be totally different. then it was not a good use of time right now, basically.
All right. Well, I guess we're at time. Good call here. And see you guys next week.
Yeah, Utibe, since you asked about the view-only link, that's actually on the design docs. If you go to bitcoincore.app at the very top, there's a link to, I don't know what it says right at the top of my head, just called Figma file or design file or so. Figma community file, working file. And then the milestones themselves, a lot of them also have Figma links at the very top. So if you want to dig in, it's there.
I was referring to Michael's link, not that particular link, because we were talking about like reaching a final conclusion.
Yeah.
So I think it's too far for us to grab it. Maybe we could see it pixel for pixel. So before the call, maybe the next call, then we could reach like a conclusion.
Yeah, I think at some point, right, then I would, or Christoph and I would port that content to the original file back, right?
But right now you can share a view-only link to Figma, right? In the Discord.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm gonna stop the recording here. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope this was interesting. See you next time.